Hey, Bob Cooney here. I am so thrilled to be bringing you this panel. Three of my good friends have joined. So it's kind of just like hanging around on the living room sofa if we were actually allowed to be in each other's homes. I want to introduce Sean Griffin, Joanna Popper, and Leif Petersen from Nomadic, HP, and HOLOGATE, respectively. Say hi, guys.
Hi, everyone.
So let's, for those of you that don't know, let's start brief introduction in my top left corner. Sean, you want to go?
Sure. So everyone, I'm Sean Griffin. I'm president of Nomadic. Nomadic, we are an immersive entertainment company. So we are primarily in the VR space right now, which is what we'll be talking about today. But our kind of area of expertise and the thing that we focus on is development of immersive experiences based on top tier IP. And that's kind of the thing that we're really excited about bringing to the FEC and the arcade market.
Is that a little teaser behind you?
My background is somewhat related to the kinds of IP that Nomadic works with, yes.
Awesome. Joanna.
Hello, everybody. It's great to be here with you all. My name is Joanna Popper. I'm the global head of virtual reality focused on go-to-market and location-based entertainment at HP. And at HP, we work with a ton of companies in this space around some of our VR technology, like our VR headsets. We are about to launch the HP Reverb Generation 2, and we just announced the HP Reverb Generation 2 Omnicept Edition. And we also work with a lot of the companies in this space with our virtual reality backpacks. You can see a couple of them behind me.
Awesome, thanks. And Leif, what do you do?
I'm Leif. I'm CEO of and founder of HOLOGATE. And so for the last few years, we've quite successfully sold and deployed multiplayer virtual reality systems all over the world. We're currently in about 35 countries, got about 350 installations running live. And it's been a very exciting journey, and looking forward to tonight and talking to you guys again. It's always great to meet you, so very excited.
Yeah, it's funny too, and tonight, and it's 4 a.m. here in Australia, and you guys are in California where it's the middle of the afternoon, and it's the wonder of technology. So Leif, let's start. Let's start with you, Leif. Oh, that's right, you're in Miami, that's right. And so we've got 4 time zones. Let's start with you. Let's talk about what's happening just to get it out of the way, and then we can move into the future. You've got a lot of locations out there in 30 countries. They're coming back online in a lot of places that they have. What are you seeing like in your network around the use of VR in amusement locations right now?
Yeah, so I mean, the locations that are actually allowed to open, and so, I mean, so some locations, they are allowed to open, other they're just allowed to open with restrictions. So, it really depends on, all the different regulations in these different countries and even per state in the United States. In general, like what we've seen, so we can track all the data and we have analytics. We're probably one of the very few companies that actually has quite a lot of data for this industry. And so we can get a good picture of what's happening. And so, I mean, in April and May, really our player numbers worldwide, they dropped to 0. So they were literally down to 0, like no one was playing nowhere, anywhere. And so this has gone up over the last few months. And so currently, I think, so we have some venues that are still closed because they're not allowed to open. Actually, we have some that will never sadly open again, of course, as well, and that didn't make it through the crisis. But also looking at larger chains, for example, in the United States, when we look at the data, I think also talking to our clients and so forth, and it kind of correlates to what we see in the data. And I think that most venues on average are probably running at about 70% of their pre-COVID levels of players coming into the venues and so forth. So I think that's where we're at currently, and it's recovering.
And that 70%, I think you said players coming into the venue. Are you seeing are you able to correlate the VR
Yes.
play? One of the narratives happening in the industry right now is that, you know, because pre-COVID, people were like, oh, you know, VR hygiene is really important. And there's this term hygiene theater, which I coined in 2015. And now, but the shifted to the whole facility. So what are you learning? And I know you guys took a leadership role in hygiene during the beginning of the COVID crisis. What are you learning about how people are viewing VR in the hygiene perspective and how that's leading to play or not?
Yeah. So first of all, I think that like we cannot, we can, of course, from our numbers, we can only see our place, but we actually have asked some of our larger clients to provide some data so that we can actually see how it correlates to overall play. So we can gauge if our player numbers basically correlate to the people in the place or not. And so it looks like by the data that we've gathered from some of our largest clients, and so this is yeah, quite a lot of venues, that in general, it's people don't have a problem playing VR. So this is really the good news for anyone that works in VR, because people that come, it correlates. Yeah, so it's the same. So if you have 70% of people that come into your venue, you also have 70% of the numbers that you had on the VR attractions as before. So there is no difference really. So this is really the good news. And so this is something that especially we were very scared about at the start, and I wasn't sure how this is going to go, because there is some people, you know, that claim that, you know, no one wants to put on a VR headset in public anymore, and it's simply not true. So what it comes down to, and that's also the other part of your question that you just asked, is of course you have to show your hygiene measures, and there's two things. So one, of course, you have to really you know, care about the hygiene, but also people have to see it, and this hygiene theater is of course very important. So we also have encouraged our clients, for example, to, you know, ask their players if they want to clean their own headsets, for example, or if they're fine with the cleaning that they've done and so forth. And so there's different strategies and solutions. And we have quite a good blog post on our website on hologate.com, which is about what we call the HOLOGATE hygiene and safety standards. And it's basically the same standards that we've spread to all our clients before, but just internal. And now we just basically made it public and said, look guys, that's what we think is the right thing to do. And it's based on best practice and what we think is makes sense, works, and is also at the same time practical.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, Leif. Now, Joanna, you've got a pretty broad view of the location-based VR market in general. And so what are you seeing out there, you know, on a global basis, and who's coming back and who's not, and what kind of trends are emerging from your perspective?
Thanks, Bob. Well, yes, I would you know, layer into what Leif said, that we have seen pretty strong numbers, pretty good numbers. You know, really depends on where in the world you are. And so there are places that the regulations are such that, you know, places still haven't opened, but where they have been able to be open, the numbers are really strong. You know, we work with customers that and partners like Zero Latency. They actually have 36 of their 45 locations have reopened. And so their numbers have been really, really strong. We work with Dreamscape, we work with Park Playground, we work with Vex and J Square, and they all are continuing to, they're taking lots of different measures, but we've actually seen them continue to open, many of them continue to open even new places during this time period. And so we're seeing, you know, there are groups that are either, you know, have business models, are well financed enough to weather the storm and the dip, and then come back, you know, take that time to reassess, see what's necessary. You know, everyone was in this sort of rush, grow. And so the companies that had the financial funding and the wherewithal to be able to stop, take a beat, see what they wanted to do for the future, look at their strategy, come up with new plans around this current era, and then move forward. So we're starting to, you know, we've seen people do, you know, the hygiene theater that everyone has been talking about, and really look at that in new and different ways. We're seeing people look at their content and changing the games even in some ways, so that you're not near anybody else inside the gameplay. We're seeing, you know, touchless check-in systems, and so everything is done, you know, maybe by a phone, but you don't have to touch tickets. We're seeing some places put that you in your group, you only go with people who you came with or you know. Although some places, depending on the location, have already started to phase that out, and they've seen that people have been comfortable going in with others. But one thing I think is really important to remember is that VR naturally, in some ways, is somewhat social distance compared to other aspects of entertainment, right? So if you compare it to a movie theater, if you compare it to a theme park, if you compare it to a museum, or even other aspects of family entertainment, typically in VR you only have anywhere from 4 to 8 people. They tend to not be on top of each other already because of the technology, and sometimes you have one person in 10 by 10. So it really depends on the environment, but we're seeing a lot of positive signs and positive numbers. And then of course there are other companies that weren't either financed to be able to weather the storm, or decided to pivot out to something else, or took an acquisition and have moved on to something else.
Yeah, it's interesting. I feel like the whole social distancing thing is something that VR hasn't embraced as much as they could have. The fact that it's inherent in the system, especially in the room scale VR, or I know zero latency, as you'd mentioned, has this alert where there's a proximity alert in the software, and if you get too close, it warns you and then stops the game, and you have to stop. And so it seems like it's like almost the perfect pandemic, activity if the industry would just embrace that. And I feel like everybody's a little worried about blowback or social media shaming or whatever might happen with it. Before I get to you, Sean, I want to go back to Leif, because I think you touched on something, Joanna, that I've seen you do, Leif, with or a lot of your operators have done, where they've turned HOLOGATE, which used to be you just get in line, you play with whoever's there. And now that some of them have turned the HOLOGATE into almost like a VR lounge and put some couches around it. What's happening there, and how has that changed, your view of the attraction?
Actually, to be honest, it was, what's happening currently. That's how we always saw it, because we always saw, okay, you don't just dump it into the arcade, but it's actually a social, something you do together. It's a social for social gatherings, like with friends and family and so forth. And so we've started promoting this even before COVID, but now for some reason people are listening a little bit more. And so because it's like, okay, what can you do with your friends and family in small groups together, and what would people enjoy to do? And so this is what we've just put out there, and also new clients, and it's really nice. We just opened up actually we opened up a new venue here just in Munich, very, very nice one. And same there, we told them, look guys, please put some lounges there and offer not just one-off kind of arcade type 5-minute experience, but offer 30 minutes or 60 minutes, and it's super successful. So people are there, they're hanging out, they're playing, and they're enjoying it. And so we have enough different games now that you can easily hang out for an hour and play games. There's 14 different games now, or you can't even play through all the games in an hour. So it's more like a model of a karaoke room if you want, right? So it's a little bit different, or bowling and so forth. And I think this is a really great way to see, and I think there's different formats, right? I mean, if you look at single player self-operated machines, they make a lot of sense in arcades. And what we've created, our platform, makes a lot of sense also in a social setting, and have people hang around and watch and compete, and have drinks and some foods and snacks on the side. And you can have your own private system and book it, and it's perfect. And still, also in HOLOGATE, it's 1.5 meters, what we have to, at least in Europe, what is it in feet? I always forget. But, it's the social distancing is inbuilt basically into the system. So we're also lucky in that sense that the dimensions are quite perfect for that.
Cool, thanks. Now you were the first company to one of the first companies in the location-based VR space to adopt a big IP with Angry Birds a couple of years ago. Now, Sean, you're bringing, your history personally with Disney and then with The Void over to Nomadic, and you've kind of pivoted, and I know that term's being thrown around a lot and some people gag when they hear it, but it is what it is. And you guys are kind of pivoting Nomadic into this new publisher role. Why is that, and how do you see that role evolving, and why is the time now for kind of a Nomadic publisher in location-based VR?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, and for maybe a little bit of history on the, what Nomadic was, pre-pivot. Before I joined the company, they were kind of similar in product to what my previous company was, The Void. So large, 1,200 square foot stages, groups of four would go through. And like many companies in that space, like the Voids and the Dreamscapes, they would do everything in the value chain. So they would, R&D products, procure them, distribute them, operate them, and then develop games for them. What you find in a lot of, industries as they mature, a way they become more efficient and effective is for parties to specialize. And, when we came into it, we realized that, we didn't want to be all things at once. And in fact, we weren't good at all things. I think that, this is, we're talking kind of FECs, and one of my kind of main takeaways from being both at the Void and Nomadic is operations is incredibly difficult. And so, when you have VR companies that are getting in and are trying to become operators as well, that's hard. I mean, it's hard to learn how to operate a business, labor and all that stuff. So, what we want to do is we want to focus on the things that we thought were really important and that we were good at. I've always been a real believer that the thing that's going to bring in the demand, at least right now, is top tier content. I do think that VR is something that's, over time being demystified. More and more people are getting to use it and they understand what it is. But it's still, in the early part of its adoption curve, and you need something to help people get over that hurdle of trying a new technology. And so, content is the thing that works. I mean, we saw that at the Void, very clearly. When we launched our first Star Wars experience called Secrets of the Empire, I mean, people didn't care what technology we were using. They're just like, I get to go do a new Star Wars thing, great. Like, where do I sign up? And that was a really important key learning for us and something that we've taken to heart. And that's something we're focusing on Nomadic. And so, whereas before we were single platform, we only did, we're working on our own stages. We're now working with other platforms. And so, our first kind of foray back with Lucasfilm at Nomadic was we did a lightsaber dojo pop-up. We were using the Oculus Quest for that, and we launched in 6 cities, day and date with the last movie that came out, The Rise of Skywalker. Great test. It was kind of a test that we want to see how the market reacts to it. Learned a lot from it, and now we're coming back to market with kind of a 2.0 version, one that has some upgrades from the first one. So we're using different hardware, different go-to-market strategy. And we've upgraded the content as well. So we did announce that with Lucasfilm last week. Some of the things you can see from the press release and the key art that's come out is you now get to fight against stormtroopers, and Darth Vader is in the experience, which is a very big upgrade from our previous experience. But I do think that working with top tier IP is hard, and it's a lot of work. And if it was easy, everyone would do it. And that's why I think it's important that companies like mine specialize. I do think that if you're a company that's doing everything, you might not have the resources or the bandwidth to focus on, doing all of the hard work to manage the relationships and make sure the quality is there on bringing a top IP to market. And so that's why we're focusing on just the game publishing aspect right now, and specifically on top tier IP.
Yeah, a couple interesting things there. One, I'm going to circle back to Joanna and then Leif. So Joanna, I know you work with Zero Latency, and they just announced the big Ubisoft Far Cry deal where they're going to, co-develop this free roam solution. Is HP involved in that in any way? What's your view of the IP, driven movement around VR?
Well, they'll be using our technology for that. And then we're also working with Microsoft. Our new headset, the HP Reverb Generation 2, is a collaboration between Valve and Microsoft and HP. And Microsoft is about soon going into closed beta with Microsoft Flight Simulator, which is another really huge IP that we're super excited about. And it will be optimized for the HP Reverb Generation 2. So we're pretty thrilled.
And is that going to be licensable for location-based VR?
I don't know. Is it?
I don't know. It'd be cool because I know the idea of putting that in a motion base would be pretty incredible.
I'll circle back on that. I'll let you know.
Yeah, cool. Leif, so you guys did the early Angry Birds on it. Most of your games are built on your own IP. I know you did you also did one based on a German property, Das Boot. What's your experience been with IP, and how do you view IP in your business and in the location-based VR space specifically?
Yeah, I mean, it's very much what Sean also said. I mean, of course, working with IP creates a fair bit of overhead, so it's more expensive because you have to get approvals from in our case Rovio and Sony, so even kind of two IP holders involved. Even more stress if you want. So I mean, personally here we were. I've worked with a lot of big brands before, you know, our venture here into VR, and so we worked with all kind of automotive brands from Ferrari, Audi, BMW, and whatnot, LG, I don't know. So I was kind of used to handling clients and expectations and how to do that. And the funny thing is, so I worked a lot in 3D animation and visual effects, and so you know, there was you know, people were really like down to the pixel in single frames looking at things, you know, and it's very nitty gritty. And so in VR, it's actually a little bit easier because essentially it's a game and you can only play it once. And so if something, you know, you don't just go down to the pixel, like it's impossible. So, but at the end, of course, it creates an overhead. It also creates a value, of course, because it's a, you know, renowned brands like Star Wars or like Angry Birds. It's fantastic. And I also, I mean, we talked to a lot of the major studios and IP holders, and we were kind of looking at what we thought you know, is valuable and makes sense. And so I mean, Angry Birds in the family entertainment space is used a lot for all kind of machines, and so we thought that this is quite valuable, and it has proven to be quite valuable. But it's also, of course, there's a certain cost and time and so forth involved, and licensing. And so, yes, I mean, I think that it has to be the right IP, and there's only a few really good ones that also works and with the medium and so forth. So it's not just about any IP. I think you have to be very picky in a way to get something that's really interesting for everybody.
I was going to add on what Leif was saying about that. It really has to be, it has to be an IP that takes advantage of what the medium of VR offers. And so VR offers interactivity, immersion, multiplayer in some cases, and the possibility to do things that are not possible in this current world. And so, you know, we worked, for example, with DreamWorks and How to Train Your Dragon. And in that IP, they were specifically working with, you know, flying on a dragon and petting a dragon. So no matter what you do in the real world today, there's no flying on a dragon, there's no petting a dragon, right? So VR is the perfect, like, is a perfect medium because it gives you that opportunity as an audience to be inside that fictional or fantastical world. And so, you know, Star Wars, of course, would be another one. You know, there's specific worlds that really make sense and take advantage of what VR has to offer. And other IPs may be really huge and get a lot of interest, but if you're not able to take advantage of VR as, you know, what's native about it, what's endemic about it, it might not make as much sense.
Yeah, Sean, what's the, so working with the Star Wars universe and you know, and the ability to wield a lightsaber and face off against Darth Vader, like, you know, every kid, myself included, like that's been a dream. What's, you know, how have you brought that to market? What changes did you make from the pop-up in Quest? What's the new platform? And we'll talk about the future there after that.
Yeah, absolutely. So lots of key learnings from that first pop-up that we did. So I'll kind of run through a few of them. So, you know, one I kind of alluded to earlier is that, you know, is about operation. So we were operating it ourselves, and we did, you know, we developed the platform, not the HMD, but essentially the shell within which the play happened. We created all that, and we deployed it, and we operated it. Very difficult. It's a hard go-to-market strategy, and it's hard to get to scale. So, you know, for our 2.0 version, we're going to be leveraging third parties. So, you know, working with operators who already have their operations set up, you know how to do this stuff. And actually, we've already secured some big distribution, which we hope to be announcing, you know, in the near future, which we're really excited about. So one is to work with you know, FECs and operators and arcades who are already in the market. A second is making it a little bit more of a social experience. So when we were in market, players were playing on a Quest, and you could watch them play, but you couldn't see what was in the headset. So it was, both kind of a technical limitation of the Quest at the time, and also a technical limitation of our company at the time. The new product that we're bringing out allows, has a very, very large screen on it, 75 inches. So it allows anyone who is, friends and family of the player to see what they're doing at the time of play. Hugely, hugely important, right? Because there's multiple ways to have social interaction in VR. In a lot of the voids and the dreamscapes, the way you do that is through actually being in VR with the person. But this too, I think, is still allows that social aspect, because people actually know what you're doing, as opposed to just seeing you in a headset, swinging your arms around. So that's really key and critical. I mentioned the gameplay is being upgraded. So, and by that I mean, adding more of the iconic characters. Our first pass at this was, there's always wish fulfillment in Star Wars of having a lightsaber in your hand. It is just cool. I mean, it feels surprisingly real, even though there is no real lightsaber. It just feels like what you would think a lightsaber would feel like. Fans and our players loved it when we released it. But we really wanted to amp up the wish fulfillment. Joanna brought up the idea of you want to make sure you lean into the magic that this medium can create. And we're like, well, let's amp it up, right? Let's not just give them a lightsaber and let them train against droids. Let's give them some stakes, and let's give them some iconic characters. And so bringing in the Stormtroopers and Darth Vader is really important. And so far, just in our early testing during development, that moment when Vader arrives, people just get really excited. I mean, that's the true wish fulfillment. Not just have the lightsaber, but have the lightsaber and face the Dark Lord himself. Lastly, we are, this kind of goes into not just the deployment, but the operation side of it. We're bringing in, deploying through operators who are already established and are out there, but we're going to be doing it through a laborless cabinet. So this is essentially the VR equivalent of a Pac-Man machine, right? So player goes up, taps their cards, plays the game, walks away. And so there's unlike kind of other operations where you have to have many people staffing it, this is something that just stands alone, and players can come and play, and just rotate through. So it's it's great from a throughput perspective, but it's also really important for the economics of the operators.
And can you talk a little bit about the hardware partnership, and because we're going to get into, people are wondering, wow, how do I get this Star Wars thing? You're being somewhat mysterious. So is there anything you can talk about that, or?
Yeah, no, I'm happy to. So not something that we've necessarily talked about publicly yet, but it's it's no secret. So we were lucky enough to connect with the team over at V-Arsenal. So they're the team behind the Beat Saber cabinet, which I think a lot of folks have seen out in the marketplace. That has performed phenomenally well, both because it's a great IP. That game is amazing, and the tech that they've created is just very, very efficient. It has great throughput. It has very little downtime because it's robust. And the quality is fantastic. They're using top of the line HMDs. They're using, top of the line screens to show the gameplay. And so we work together with them to package kind of our game with their hardware to bring it to market.
So let's talk about tech a little bit. And so Joanna, I know you guys have been on the forefront of pushing bespoke technology for location-based virtual reality. The original Reverb was pushing the envelope on both graphics and comfort. And now you have a new headset coming out. What do you guys, what are you doing in that space to enable the location-based VR experiences to be, more reliable and better than what people can do at home? Because, the Quest 2 just released and it's $299, and some people in our industry, the big question is all right, we've been through this arcade thing before, where all of a sudden console gaming kind of eviscerated the arcade industry. And so everybody's like, how do we stay different? And I feel like you guys might be on the leading edge of that. So talk about that from your perspective a little bit.
Sure, yeah, it was great questions. Yeah, so we have our new HP Reverb G2 coming out, just actually gonna be shipping this month. So there's a lot of really great things about that headset for for this environment. It's a partnership with Valve, Microsoft, and HP that I mentioned earlier. It is super, super high resolution. We already were the highest resolution among major vendors headset before. We now have brand new lenses that were designed by Valve. So that takes that 2160 that we already had and takes it to a whole new level. I know some people on this call have been in the headset, but they actually haven't even been in the final. So it's going to get even better than what they've been in so far. And so we're really excited about that. The audio is amazing. It's, kind of the top of line, similar to what the Valve Index did. Super comfortable, lightweight on your head. Flat, a 6-meter cable also. So in sort of low LBE environments that you're doing room scale and want to have room to move around, that's great. And then of course if you're working with a backpack, you want that high performance, you want the high GPU, you want that high render power, something that not every headset out there is offering. You can plug it into your backpack. And so that's what we're doing today. I mean, most of, we see those LBE players who are most focused on bringing that realism, bringing that higher end graphics, bringing those graphics that really immerse you in a different level, are still pretty focused on PC VR or tethered VR. Whether it's through some sort of cord, like some of the stuff people in this call are doing, or directly with a backpack. So that's what we have, and then we're about to be shipping. And then we also just announced another new headset that's really sort of pushing into the future. So we see the HP Reverb G2 as targeted both to business LBE as well as some gamers at home that want that highest level quality. And then we announced another, and so for that environment as well as businesses. And then our second headset we just announced is called HP Reverb Generation 2 Omnicept Edition. And that's really playing into the future. It's for developers, it's for enterprise, and it brings in a couple really special components. Heart rate sensors, eye tracking, pupillometry, and face camera. And it's sort of 3 parts. It comes the hardware, there is software and SDK. The first one we're rolling out is cognitive load. So, more for the training environment, but we have a couple more SDKs coming next year that are going to be more around, emotion and expression and things that would be really relevant in this market. And then there's the third-party apps that are being built on top of it. So we're, HP sees virtual reality and this technology as the future of computing, the future of media and entertainment. And we're incredibly focused on this market and continuing to build out for the future.
Yeah, and I imagine that over time, those features and people, they'll trickle down into the more accessible, affordable hardware that the location-based guys seem to be gravitating towards. But I can see, cognitive load and first-time user interface, as a game developer, potentially going hand in hand, right? Where you can measure how much people, because one of the challenges with VR the first time you do it is it's overwhelming, right? There's an overload. It's like, oh my God, and people don't read instructions. They don't listen to what they're supposed to do. They're just like looking around in amazement. And the ability to tune into people and have adaptive learning around even an entertainment experience, I could see be really valuable. That's fascinating.
Exactly. Yeah, we're really looking forward to see what all the developers go and build with it. We're here providing the tools, we're providing the hardware, we're providing the SDK for them, and then we've been working with some early access partners, and we're really excited to see what comes out of it and all the genius that the developers and enterprise bring to it.
Yeah, Leif, you guys were the first ones that I'm aware of that started using the Valve Index when it first came out, and how did you see? So how big of a part, people get really hung up on the hardware and the technology and the resolution and the headset. And, what have you, I've always said, oh, it's the experience that matters more. And so what have you learned as you've kind of gone through a couple of different iterations and continue to evolve your hardware stack? What insights can you give the audience around what role tech plays in the overall solution?
So, in general, I think that, of course, you can, if someone's never done VR, you can maybe thrill them with an old Google Cardboard or something, with just maybe, right? Of course, people get used to it. And so then there's some expectations. So people always think, oh, it's this fantastical world. And maybe then Google Cardboard doesn't cut it anymore. I think that I think that graphics in general are important. I mean, I have a huge graphics background. So as I said before, you know, I come from photoreal animations for high-end commercials and feature films and so forth. So for us and for me, this was always very important. And if I look at players, and I think that in general, people enjoy or expect to get, you know, really into a world that might resemble a photoreal or a hyperreal world. And so, of course, if it's Angry Birds, it's in a kind of cartoonish style. But in general, I think that a lot of people they look forward to this. And I think then what it comes down to, and that's something that's also lately, yeah, no, also you discussed a lot, Bob, is about high fidelity. So it's about offering, you know, we talked about social experiences earlier a little bit, but then the other part is, I think, the technology, and then it comes down to what's really important for out-of-home entertainment is to create something that is high fidelity, and it is the same, you know, how cinema stayed relevant for a very long time because they had spaces that were way higher fidelity than what anybody had at home. And of course, this gap has been getting smaller and smaller over the last few years. And now with the pandemic, of course, it's become terrible for cinemas, right? But in terms of VR, I think to stay high fidelity is very important for out-of-home entertainment, and that's why also we always try to kind of offer something that's really bleeding edge and high end, and to stay with that, and also to stay relevant. Also, you know, potentially against something that might happen in the in-home space, but still, I think out-of-home VR doesn't have to be so worried about being redundant, because first of all, it's about, again, creating social experiences and then offering a high fidelity experience that you can't have at home. And as such, you know, also the numbers of headsets that people have at home, they're still very, very low, also in comparison to, you know, what you can see in regards to consoles. And of course, Facebook now is trying to change this. Will they achieve this? We don't know, and this will be very interesting to follow for the next few years, what's going to happen in that space.
Yeah, I think I think the move to mobile headsets is actually good for location-based VR because it's going to be easy. And I know, Sean, you've talked about that difference between what you can do on a mobile headset, right?
Exactly. It's the point I was, you know, just going to make is, and, you know, just for this audience, you know, who it maybe is not in touch with kind of the overall VR landscape, like those of us on this call, like, you know, Oculus just announced the Quest 2, and this is it's a mobile headset, it's an all-in-one headset, and they're going out very big with it. And I think that that's a very big net positive for location-based VR for two reasons. So one is what Bob just mentioned, is that while the Oculus 2 is and the Oculus 1 were fantastic, it can't deliver the same, you know, it can't deliver the same graphic fidelity that you know, a PC-based VR experience can, which is what you're going to get in a location-based VR experience. And secondly, there's just things you can do, you know, either with, you know, socially or with 4D effects in location-based that you can't do in an in-home experience. So there's always going to be that stratification of the experiences, and by virtue of having the top tier type experience in location-based, that's going to be, I think that's going to draw people to location-based. But the other thing that, you know, we're talking about is that I still think, I brought this up earlier, new technology is a hurdle, and we're, you know, with Oculus going out with the Quest, you're going to get more and more and more people who've already had their first VR experience, which means they are just exponentially more likely to have their second VR experience. And so, you know, by having the in-home market grow, I actually think it's going to be a very big reason why people start engaging more with location-based VR, as opposed to a reason why they might stay home.
Yeah, and I think it's also going to help operationally. Once people have put on a headset, they get a lot more comfortable doing it again, and then you don't have to hold their hands each time. And, you know, and so I think it's going to, you know, familiarity is going to make the operations a hell of a lot easier. So Joanna, where's this all going? Like, let's spend the end of this, like, looking into the crystal ball. You know, what do you guys see for the next couple of years in the location-based VR space emerging? What trends are you excited about?
Well, we're really, really excited to see the rebound, right? So that's first, right? Just, you know, I think this was this was not written 6 months ago, right? You know, like in the beginning of the pandemic, that we would see the rebound coming as quickly, as aggressively as it has. So that is one that we're excited about, and we're excited to see people continue to expand. And so we look forward to this industry getting back on track. You know, it was on this huge, it's on track for huge CAGR, right? Huge growth. And so we're looking forward to, you know, seeing the dip and then seeing it go back towards that in the future, as hopefully we, you know, worldwide, this the current situation gets under control. And I would but you know, to add to that, I would, you know, additional elements around social experiences, around extending those social experiences in venue and taking them back home with you, staying connected to those experiences even when you're not in the experience. I think there's going to be a lot around that, you know, bringing those experiences with you, and then you know, continued on multiplayer, having the technology to end up with more and more people, you know, not cap out at that 4, that 6, or that 8, or, you know, 10 or 12, but, you know, having technology that would allow many more people, that will increase the throughput and make this an even better proposition for the businesses. So those are
something we talked a lot about the consumer market driving awareness, but, you know, you guys are massive in enterprise as well. And just before we move too far off of that, I think that, you know, lots of people got exposed to mobile technology through BlackBerries at work. And that's what kind of created the awareness that, oh, I can have the internet away from my desk. And then the mobile smartphone explosion happened. You know, one of the thinkings is that people are actually going to get exposed more to VR in the workplace than they are through consumers, and then seek it out. What's happening just really quickly trend-wise, and because of the pandemic accelerating everything, what are you seeing with VR adoption in the rest of the kind of the enterprise space?
Yeah, we see VR really being accelerated for four main things: to learn, to create, to collaborate, and to connect. And we're seeing that in work environments. We're seeing it because people are still needing to get trained on work, but they're not going to the places that they were before. So VR can help on enterprise training. We're seeing it with, you know, nearly 90% of students are not in their physical classroom. And so educators and teachers all around the world are figuring out, how do I keep that level of engagement up? And so we're seeing universities calling us, asking for, you know, VR launch kits for the students there, and with, you know, a laptop, a VR capable laptop plus a headset. And so we're selling packages like that to universities. We're seeing you know, people who are used to brainstorming together or working on CAD models or product design and development and quality review, but are all physically separated, or, you know, coming to us to make sure that everyone has the VR technology to be able to do that from wherever they were. Now, this was being done in pockets before, but now it's accelerating. We're seeing this more and more and more. And so, you know, many of the trends we saw are just accelerating given the current circumstance.
Yeah, cool, thanks. Leif, did you guys do any VR collaboration while you guys were kind of, I assume your company was working from home at some point, and then finish off by, like, what do you see? What's coming down the pike for HOLOGATE or the industry in general?
I mean, currently the huge majority of the team is back in the office here in Germany. The situation is kind of gone better. So let's hope now and cross fingers that, you know, it's not going to go much worse. Of course, numbers are creeping up here again, and so also for the future, I think that you know, I really hope that we can get to a stage where this industry keeps recovering in the way that, you know, it's currently, you know, it looks like it's going to recover. Of course, like player numbers, so that we say, okay, there's still a lot of people playing VR again, and that's fine. That's one part, but then of course the other part for companies, it's sales numbers. So, and that doesn't correlate quite as well as people playing, and so that's of course a problem for the whole industry. And so, I mean, you have to try to survive and get through this. So we're also doing some enterprise projects currently, and we've always had this second vertical. We haven't done much in that space in the last few years because we were so focused on the entertainment market. So now it's kind of, we're doing both. And so I think in the enterprise market, it's interesting, and it's similar to what Joanna just said, because yeah, in maybe 2016, when we started talking to companies in that space, and a lot of them, they weren't ready. They didn't know what this is and why and how. They didn't take it serious, and it's changed. So now a lot of big enterprises actually do take it serious and understand that there is a huge value to this. And as such, I mean, I played VR for the first time in 1993, so it's been a while. And Bob's been in this for a while, so it's not like, you know, we know this is not just since 2016, but it's going on much longer. So I think it will just go on, and where all of this goes, who knows? We have companies like Neuralink from Elon Musk that might replace headsets one day, and maybe we all live in the matrix already. Right? Who knows?
Yeah. We all, yeah. And that's something I just want the audience to think about as well. You know, VR isn't just for entertaining your guests. Like, companies are being really successful rolling this around and training your guests, and you know, and they're using it for like de-escalation, you know, tactics and things, and HR is using it to, you know, teach people how to, you know, be more empathy driven with their employees. There's so many applications that you can VR from outside of just entertaining your guests that, you know, it'd be good to open your minds to. Sean, last words. What's, you know, you've had a really interesting, you know, career in this, you know, third wave of VR, as I call it. What do you see? Where do you see this going? What's happening? Where's it gonna go?
Yeah, I mean, I think the change that I expect to see that's coming out of COVID, or, you know, one of the silver linings from this, is that you know, when this third wave started, whatever that was, 2015, 2016, you know, I think that a lot of us were trying to figure out what the right business model was. And the way we got there is to look at analogs, right? Like, we looked at kind of, you know, other businesses that looked like this, and then said, all right, we're going to kind of apply similar rates. You know, I'm not sure that and those were not all the right direction to go in. And I think what this does, what COVID's going to force everyone to do, is to press the reset button. And, you know, we've learned a ton over the last few years. And I do think that coming out of this, there's going to be, you know, a kind of a right sizing of the business models, so that, you know, all of the players, you know, from, you know, the hardware manufacturers to the content developers to the operators, are able to make this a really lucrative business. So, you know, I think that that's already started. But look, when you have these kinds of downturns, it gives people the opportunities to renegotiate and you know, recalibrate, you know, some agreements, and I fully expect that to happen, and I think that that's only going to be to the long-term benefit of this industry.
Yeah, cool. Well, I want to thank you guys all for taking some time and sharing your well-earned insights into the VR space and how it's intersecting with location-based VR. I want to thank blooloop for pulling this together too. And everybody, how do we get in touch with you guys? How do people reach out if they want to reach out? Sean?
You could reach me via email at sgriffin@blurtheline.com.
Joanna, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Best way to get in touch with me is on Twitter, Instagram at Joanna Popper, or my LinkedIn. I will give you my HP email, but we have very high security and the emails don't often get through. So I think social media is the best way to find me.
And I can testify Joanna's very responsive on social media. So, and Leif, what about you guys? How do they get in touch with HOLOGATE?
Yeah, so I mean, you can write to me, just write to leif@hologate.com, or to our sales. So sales@hologate.com, that's pretty easy. But also, if you have a bit of a following on LinkedIn, so happy to connect there as well. I regularly post about things that I find interesting, and it's great. I think it's a great medium to connect, so happy to connect there as well.
Yeah, beautiful. Definitely follow all of these guys on social media. I'm Bob Cooney. You can get me at vrbob@bobcooney.com or at bobcooney.com, LinkedIn, wherever. I'm not on Twitter. I've tried. I just can't seem to figure that one out. But other than that, thanks for joining. Enjoy the rest of the conference, and hope to see you in real life at some point in the near future. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks
Bob.
everyone.
Thank you, Bob.
Bye, guys.